I feel like I could not want a mortgage and then talk to you and be like, I just got a new mortgage. Like this guy.
Here's the thing. I'm a fun guy to talk to, and I'm going to call, and we're going to connect a little bit.
And you're going to follow up, too.
And I'm going to follow up because I got a bunch of folders on that desk, and I'm going to hit them once or twice a day.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that we can, do business together. And if it doesn't make sense, Tom, we part as friends. And that was my line. That was a line we all said. We said. And then,
but you're trained to not accept. No, like that's the thing.
I wouldn't
use
really
the word guys.
Trained.
Right.
I'd be very loose with the training that we all received. Okay. The training was a guy going, how about you make some fucking money?
Right.
And shutting his door.
Yeah.
And then literally a bunch of unemployable guys, some of whom had DWIs whose mothers were dropping them off at the office, then got on phones and called people and said we were financial advisors.
Right. Oh.
Everyone's realizing there's nothing real anymore. No one believes the same set of facts. Money is basically meaningless at this point. When the market crash happened, everybody moved down a little bit. Yeah. Professionals were taking whatever job they could get in desperation. Millennials then took gutter jobs, and then the younger people who were supposed to be working fast food to get started were having no jobs. Nothing. Now they're just sitting there saying, system's broken. It's always been broken.
Because these were adjustable rate mortgages, and you got 2 or 3 years of a fixed rate, a little stability, and then, hey, let's ride the rails together. Like, you're smart, financially savvy guy. Yeah. Why not take a little chance? Because we all are. And the thing is, no one thought this was all going to go bad. That's the thing. No one really, like, all the, revisionist history is like, these guys were con artists and everything. And it's like, okay, we weren't the most reputable people, but I took an adjustable rate mortgage when I bought a house. Like, nobody knew these things. Nobody knew you weren't going to be able to get out of an adjustable. We thought you'd be able to get out of it.
Some of that is the fault of the borrower, but some of it, of course, is bad disclosures or bad practices on the parts of the financial institutions. The Federal Reserve has been working hard on consumer protection under my chairmanship, and this new bureau, which will be within the Fed, but independent, will also be responsible.
But as soon as you get an elite class that's like, actually, no, you can't do these things that we can do. We've got rules that you don't have. Then it becomes, right, so we've got an evil and ill will that underpins this thing. And then it becomes uncomfortable but then people have got designs on what you have because they don't think you have it fairly. Because you don't have it fairly. You got it by having a rule for you and a rule for them, and never the twain should meet.
We've seen a systemic assault on small business and middle America for the past years at the behest, literal destruction with the burning down the rioting and then the lockdowns on behalf of corporate America.
A lot of these people in the stock market are the ones who got rich throughout the past year while everyone else was suffering.
Yeah.
That was...
I think that's adding to the frustration.
Yeah, imagine that.
Talking about kicking somebody while they're already down.
Seriously.
Man.
So what they're basically saying is $600 is actually a lot of money. All you have to do is invest it really carefully. And they're like, oh, no, not like that. Not like that.
The reason the market is doing what it's doing is people are sitting at home getting the checks from the government, okay? And this fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking wealthy people.
We all understood what stock buybacks are about. They're about companies buying back their own stock so they can inflate the price of that stock. That's just the economics of what happens.
One of the huge things that's interesting about this is that so much of this is driven by just fury at the Wall Street class. People are angry at the big banks, and they should be. I mean, after the year 2020, who could blame them?
I've seen many people in other different walks of life in minor ways finding themselves diametrically opposed to the elite class. And the elite class essentially have to come to the table and admit that they have accrued more than is justifiable.
This is happening at a time when millions of people are out of work, when millions of people are struggling.
A lot of people were put out of work by the pandemic over the past year. They have 8 hours free a day that they didn't before. So a lot of people now have time to sit there all day and read up on these things. And all of this information that they used to make the stock trade was public. The amount of shares that were short, this is all publicly available information. So they're just deciding, okay, why don't we make trades based on this information? And they did, and they made money at it.
That is not a way for them to be able to build any security at all. That doesn't create a healthy market. What we need is a healthy stock market, and to have a healthy stock market, you gotta have a cop on the beat.
Oh, you guys made money and the hedge fund class lost. That we need to intervene on right away. That we need to step in on and say, no, we have to protect the hedge fund class. It was big business interests who bought off the government to make it this huge government to begin with.
Keep in mind, one of the reasons it appears that Robinhood had to do what it did in terms of banning certain transactions is because they didn't have the cash to cover what was necessary for these transactions. And the cash is necessary because of regulations installed by, among other federal regulations, Dodd-Frank.
Very, very comprehensive. It is certainly by far the most comprehensive financial regulatory reform since the 1930s.
For all of the regulatory state that's been built up, and the financial industry is one of the most heavily, if not the most heavily regulated sector in the economy. It's incredibly regulated. I mean, you cannot operate a brokerage firm without just constant compliance with regulators. I mean, like every single move that you make.
I think everyone says, oh, it could be better, it could be improved.
And it makes a lot of fundamental changes in our financial system. To name just a few of them, it creates a Financial Stability Oversight Council, which brings together the heads of all the regulatory agencies and says, let's all work together to see if we can identify any risks that might be arising in our financial system.
It's just the necessity of trading equities in the U.S.
For all of this, they've never done anything to slow down, hedge fund speculation. But look what just happened right here. They were so overexposed that they had shorted 140% of the company. You think they'll think twice about doing that again?
The demanipulation of the stock prices against a hedge fund that is centrally guaranteed by government and by government propped up central banking, and then by so-called private banks with 1 million government loans and contracts. This is essentially an attack on socialism. Just so you know, what Reddit is engaged in, ironically enough, is a libertarian referendum on a socialistic banking system that favors the rich by structure because central government tends to pal around with the rich that donate to their campaigns.
Remember the other half of this. There are going to be a lot of people who are going to lose money around this, a lot of money that they can't afford to lose.
There's this idea that, hedge funds might have to get bailed out.
Now the SEC is saying it's going to investigate several things.
There's going to be an investigation here. We know there are going to be people who are going to turn out to be hurt.
Which means it's going to investigate the little people that made millions of dollars in the early days of GameStop trading.
The SEC has never even completed its rules defining what market manipulation is.
Which is the weaponization of the fiscal system to try to punish people for getting the novel idea, hey, because of market forces being pushed in the opposite direction, we can just invert them and we can make money and siphon the hedge funds. The hedge fund class is acting as though the free market forces that are fucking with the hedge funds is more artificial than their own manipulation of stock prices. And the truth is that that's not the case. When you've got a stock that's being repeatedly massively undervalued and driven down by a hedge fund to the tune of billions of dollars that has shorted more stock than physically exists in order to attempt to bankrupt the company, putting people out of work, that's manipulation.
What this legislation does is greatly strengthen the provisions to require regulators not just to look at their individual fiefdom, but to look at the whole financial system and try to identify risks that might be arising.
If it turns out that we really did cheat you, it'll never be made public. There'll be very little that you can do about it.